The outer ring of Station Darwin groaned like old metal resisting memory. Every corridor pulsed faintly with the beat of systems kept barely alive by failing power cores and worn-down engineers who preferred silence over small talk. Heat stuttered from vents, gravity wavered without apology, and shadows stretched in unnatural ways through the flicker of old panels. There was no sun here, only a synthetic amber wash that never quite settled into warmth. Jarek moved through it like he belonged to the decay. He had the gait of someone long forgotten by the world, who had learned every tilt of the floor and each breath of pressure doors before they groaned open. In a former life, he had worn surgical gloves and monitored cortical interfaces deep in clean labs. Now he cataloged scrap prosthetics in storage wings no one bothered to inventory, fixing what wasn't quite salvage, repairing what no one else would bother to touch. He preferred it. Ghost didn't talk back. He was in the middle of recalibrating a misaligned knee actuator when a sensor chirped low and broken. External alarm, chute 8B. Probably another rat-like scavenger crawling through insulation, he thought. But protocol remained protocol. He tapped his pad, pulling up the feed. He stopped breathing. Wedged between coolant runoff and discarded foam, a body, small, too thin, clearly alive. The limbs caught his eye first. Not just mechanical, but brutal. The legs sparked faintly where misfired nerves tried and failed to make contact with warped joints. Wires twitched under torn synth skin, like exposed nerves begging to be severed. He didn't call for security. Station Darwin didn't send rescue. It sent disposal. So he ran. The corridor to chute 8B was a cold cavern of neglect. A panel peeled from the wall, revealing decayed foam and leaking coolant. Behind it, curled into a trembling knot, was the girl. Violet skin, black hair wet against her cheek. Thin arms curled around her legs, not protectively, just because they couldn't stretch anymore. He saw the barcode inked beneath her ear. Government mark. Not a name, not a person, a tag. She was augmentation cast, born for labor, manufactured compliance, the kind bred in state chambers and tossed out when their bodies failed the quota. Jarek stepped forward, slow. She didn't react. Her eyes stayed locked to the wall, silver, wide, not blinking. "I'm not here to harm you," he said aloud, even though he knew she might not even hear. Her skin shimmered with the effort to stay still. Her breath was brittle. He knelt, not near, just low, pulled a small heater from his coat and placed it between them. Blue light pulsed in quiet waves. She flinched as it came on. "You're cold," he said. "That's all." Still no words, just her gaze fixed on his hands, waiting for pain. He pulled a thermal pouch from his bag, opened it. The smell of stew filled the air. Real food, salt, fat. Something her body remembered even if her mind couldn't trust it. 30 seconds passed before she moved. Not for the food, just for the heater. Her fingers hovered over it like she expected it to burn. When it didn't, she stared. Her body trembled from the effort of not reacting. She took the stew after a while, one spoonful at a time. Too fast at first. She coughed and he reached instinctively. She recoiled like struck, breath sharp against the wall. He froze. "I won't touch you unless you ask," he said. She didn't reply, just watched him like he might vanish. Then, barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Not fix me, just make it stop hurting." It wasn't the pain in her words that caught him. It was the emptiness, the acceptance. He couldn't promise anything, but he told her he could try. They didn't talk more that night. He left his coat beside her, activated the heater, and moved back to the wall. When she finally curled into the coat, eyes fluttering shut, he stayed where he was until her breathing evened out. When he carried her back to his quarters, light and fragile, with metal limbs barely holding together, she didn't fight. She didn't speak. She just turned her face to the wall and let him place her near the radiator. Jarek sat at his workbench long after, tools untouched, just watching the faint rhythm of her sleep. He didn't turn the light off. Her name came in pieces the next morning. She woke with the heater still on and her body registering warmth as something unfamiliar. The cot was stiff but clean. Her muscles screamed with every motion, but not from rejection, just from long misuse. She scanned the room like someone who had survived too many clinics. No restraints, no injections, no lies told in soft voices. Jarek didn't look up when she stirred. He just moved slowly, heated another meal, set it down near the cot. Protein stew, dry bread, water. Eat if you want, he said, not looking at her. She didn't move, not right away. But when her hunger overpowered her caution, she tried. The first bite burned. She flinched. He rose halfway across the room but didn't reach for her. I won't touch you unless you ask, he repeated. The words sat between them like a bridge made of glass. She finished eating in silence. When she set the spoon down, she whispered without looking at him. Why? He paused. Because others saw you and didn't stop. That was enough. She didn't believe him, but she listened. You fix things, she said. Yes. Then what am I? Not broken, he said. Just mistreated. He told her about the implants, about how pain wasn't always part of the build. Sometimes it was a side effect. Sometimes it was by design. She shook her head. They always say that. Then they send me back. He said nothing to that, only handed her a scan wand, asked her permission before activating it. May I? She looked at him for a long breath before nodding. He scanned the joint. The readings were brutal. Battlefield settings, fast fusions. No sedation, no care. Who did this? He asked. She didn't blink. Penal laboratory after a tunnel collapse. He stood too fast, turned away so she wouldn't see the heat in his expression. You need rest, he said, but I'd like to run a full scan later. No changes unless you agree. She lay down again, this time not curled, not braced, just tired, flat, breathing slow. You don't sleep much, she murmured. Too much silence, he said. Me neither. Silence never stops. He looked back at her. For the first time, he saw her not as a castaway, but as a question no one else had tried to answer. She turned her face to the heater. Good, she said. He turned back to his tools, though he didn't touch them. She closed her eyes. Her body eased, not because the pain had gone, it hadn't, but because the silence between them felt different, less like a cage, more like a breath. Before sleep took her, she whispered a single word. Kala. He didn't say it back. He just listened to it settle like a seed in the warm room and let her sleep. Kala woke to the sound of solder, a soft, steady rhythm like metal being convinced to behave. She sat up slowly, spine crackling with old damage. The pain was familiar, but it had changed shape. No longer a predator, just a weight. The room was dim, coppery light drifting across the walls like it had forgotten how to be harsh. Jarek sat at the workbench, shoulders hunched over a neural sync chip, fingers precise without being fast. He hadn't turned when she stirred. He was either ignoring her or letting her choose the moment. Her stomach growled, loudly. He stood without a word, fetched another meal tray, and set it on the floor near her without coming close. Warm stew, dry bread, water. Eat what you can, he said. Just that. She watched him a moment longer, trying to find the trap. Then slowly she leaned forward. Her joints resisted. The metal shrieked inside her legs like it remembered a different owner. First bite. Careful. Second. Slower. He didn't watch. When she finally looked at him again, her voice cracked. Why feed me? Why not report me? Why even care? Because others saw you and kept walking. That was enough. That isn't a reason. It is for me. You fix things. Yes. Then what does that make me? He didn't answer. He turned and walked to the storage cabinet. She followed his movement, her curiosity beating out her suspicion. Inside were prosthetics, some whole, some in pieces, all cleaned, stacked, labeled, nothing new, nothing abandoned. You repair all that? She asked. I try. He stood with a limb model in one hand, light catching on the edges. She reached up and touched the joint above her knee, where her own prosthetic met inflamed skin. It's swelling again, she muttered. Needs a dampener. He nodded, picked up a scan wand, held it in his hand but didn't activate it yet. May I? Her jaw tightened. She nodded once. He knelt beside the cot, passed the wand lightly over her joint. No pressure, no assumptions. His hands didn't wander, his voice didn't rise. This interface was made for combat use, he said. No inhibitors, no sedation. Just metal and screaming, she replied. Who did this? Penal laboratory after a collapse. They salvaged me, he exhaled. I don't pity you, he said. But I am furious. She blinked. That surprised her more than any soft word would have. He stood before she could see too much in his face. You need rest, but later I want to do a full scan. Still, no changes unless you say so. She lay back, flat this time. Limbs open, not guarded. He turned back to the bench but didn't touch his tools. Her voice broke the quiet. You don't sleep. Not much. Why? Too much silence. I never sleep. Silence always wins. She paused, then added, You don't talk like the others. I'm not like the others. She turned toward the heater. Good. Something shifted in her voice when she said it. Not warmth, not yet. Something closer to recognition. After a while, she asked, Do you know what they called me back in the penal ward? He looked at her. Number model K8, 4th series, labor-born, methane sector. No name, no designation. When the tunnel collapsed, she continued, they salvaged bodies like scrap. The others were tagged expired utility. I was partially recoverable. They amputated, installed the legs without anesthesia. I woke up during the second cut. The restraints weren't for humans. They were shipping clamps. Jarek's hand clenched around the edge of the workbench. I tried to fight. They said fighting meant I still had neural value, so they filed for rehabilitation funds. He didn't speak. 18 placements, all rejected. Why? He forced himself to ask. Too much pain to serve. Not enough silence to disappear. Calla pressed her thumb lightly to the edge of her thigh. A spasm flicked the muscle underneath. That's why you don't talk about the past, she said. You think it asks for forgiveness when people haven't earned it. He nodded, slowly. She didn't speak again for a while, but she didn't lie back either. She stayed beside him, close, present. They worked that way for a long time. He drafted a redesign. She pointed out flaws, pressure offsets, rotational pulls. Not because she was trained, but because survival had made her observant. You should build limbs again, she said. I did once. What happened? I saw where the best ones were going. Not to people like you. She didn't flinch, but her gaze dropped. When the radiator hissed and the station dimmed for rest cycle, he asked, Want me to dim the lights? Number, not yet. She stood slowly. Steady now. Walked halfway to the cot, turned to him. You said you don't sleep much. Still true. Yes, I do now, but only when I know you're in the room. He didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. Instead, she reached out and touched his hand. Light. Real. I remember every place that threw me out, every door that closed. But I'll remember this too. You didn't ask me to earn it. You just made space. She lay down without curling this time, the coat beside her untouched. She didn't need it. Jarek stayed at the bench, tools dark, data screen idling. When he looked back, she was asleep. Not braced, not clenched, just breathing. And for the first time in years, so was he. Jarek hadn't expected to hear a melody. It wasn't much, just a quiet hum, low and tentative, drifting from the edge of the radiator like it was afraid to exist. He paused at the threshold to his quarters, toolkit still slung in one hand. Calla sat curled with her back straight, knees tucked beneath her, fingers resting on the coat she no longer needed for warmth. Her legs, still bearing the crude prosthetics, sparked no longer. He'd patched the worst faults 2 days earlier. Just enough to allow sleep, just enough to remind her the pain didn't have to be constant. She didn't hum for him. She hadn't noticed he was there. He set the kit down, careful not to make a sound. She stilled anyway. I wasn't touching anything, she said quickly, eyes flicking up but not meeting his. I know, he replied. It was nice. She gave him a look, half skeptical, half annoyed. He smiled a little and opened the kit. I found a field-grade aligner in the recycler pit. Crude, but it listens better than the station scanners. If you're willing, I can start mapping the joints. She hesitated, then nodded once. No braces, she said. No straps. No constraints. You won't need them, he answered. I'm not designing restraints. I'm designing something that fits. Her mouth opened slightly. No reply. No refusal. He pulled up a skeletal scan on the console. Her alignment overlay shimmered, a translucent echo of her gait. She stepped closer. Watched him highlight the key torque points. You've been watching me walk, she said. Observing your gait, he corrected. Same thing. He indicated the map. Right hips fighting your lower spine. If I adjust torque response here and anchor weight distribution here, I can reduce pain by 60%. She studied the image, then spoke quietly. You talk like someone who thinks the body still listens. Sometimes it does, he said, when someone finally listens to it first. She looked at him fully now. Her eyes didn't guard themselves. He waited. Then slowly she said, Do you know what it was like after the collapse? He nodded, gently. They called me Asset 47, fourth series, methane extraction, no name, no designation, just a record line. They cut my legs during triage. I woke up mid-procedure. The restraints weren't even built for flesh. She looked at her knees. I fought, screamed. They said it proved value, that I was still salvageable. So they filed for reimbursement, shipped me to a civic clinic, rejected, then a resettlement pod, rejected, then a private rehab, rejected again. 18 placements, all said the same thing, unstable. He stared at her, not pitying, just listening. Too much pain to serve, not enough silence to disappear. She placed one hand on the edge of the display. That's why you don't talk about your past. Because when people ask, they're usually looking for a reason to let themselves off the hook. He nodded. I filed a report once, he said. A girl, 7 years old, full interface prosthetics. The tech was untested, too aggressive. It overloaded her brain. They called it a failure. I called it murder. He turned from the console. That's why I don't call myself a doctor anymore. She said nothing for a while. Then, quietly, she moved to the bench and sat beside him. Not across from, not at a distance. Beside, she helped him rework the joint design, pointed at compression faults, noticed torque feedback. You should build limbs again, she said. I used to. Why did you stop? Because they didn't go to people like you. She looked down. Later, when the room dimmed and rest cycle buzzed faintly in the walls, Jarek turned to her. Do you want me to dim the lights? No, she said immediately. Then again, softer. Not yet. He nodded. She stood, legs moving more smoothly now. She turned at the cot. You said you don't sleep. Still true. Yes, I do now, she said, but only when I know you're in the room. He didn't move. She didn't wait for more. She stepped to him and placed her fingers lightly against his wrist. No flinch. Just presence. I remember every place that discarded me, but I'll remember this too. You didn't ask me to earn space. You just gave it. She lay down on the cot without bracing this time. The coat folded nearby. She didn't need it anymore. Jarek sat beside her on the old stool, just as she'd asked. Her hand brushed his. Intentional. Quiet. I don't know what comes next, she whispered. Neither do I, he answered. But if you're here, I'm here. She didn't need anything else. Her breathing slowed. Her fingers stayed against his. When she slept that night, her dreams didn't end in sirens. They ended in light. The alarm hit like a spark to dry wire. A sharp tone from Sector 12, down by the lower airlock. Not routine, not scheduled, not a drill. Jarek looked up from the console. Kala was already on her feet. That's the restricted level, she said. Nobody's cleared that hatch in 3 cycles. They ran, through dripping corridors where lights shivered in metal hollows. The air tasted of rust and recycled breath. When they reached the hatch, Jarek tapped the feed and went still. Military uplink, he muttered, encrypted, not station standard. Kala stared at the readout. Valtari. She stepped back, hand already on the power conduit. Then she severed it. The lights died. They're here for me, she said. Jarek didn't question. Just moved. We can mask the signal. With what? Scrambler gel. Forge housing. If I dump the core feed and destabilize the backup capacitors, we can spike enough ionic bleed to distort the scan. Will it hurt the forge? Yes. Will it kill us? Number, do it, she said. They ran again. Through service tunnels, past broken doors and failing vents. The forge chamber pulsed with latent heat. Jarek tore open the base housing, poured the gel into the vent tubes. The matrix groaned, then screamed. Sparks exploded from the pressure lines. Now, he said, get down, mask your limbs. Kala dropped beside him, pulled the thermal mats over their bodies, curled her arms, legs, every inch buried beneath the insulation. The fog rose around them, radiant, hot, blinding. The sound came next. Boots, distant, deliberate, not rushing, trained. Her breath caught once. He reached under the mat, found her hand. No pressure, just presence. They're sweeping, she whispered. Standard pattern. 6 minutes. She was still trembling, but not from fear. The last time I heard that sound, she said, I lost someone. She was younger, slower. Her legs froze in the cold. She told me to run. He couldn't speak, only squeezed her hand. She didn't scream. Just said, run, like it was still allowed. Her voice cracked. She never had a name. You did, Jarek said. You do. She blinked. Her fingers curled tighter around his. You gave it back to me. Number. You reclaimed it. I just waited for you to say it. The drone passed overhead. Silence returned. No breach. No alerts. Just the distant hum of the forge and the thrum of breath beside breath. Kala didn't move. Not at first. I never thought I'd survive something like that again. You didn't just survive. You chose. You acted. When she kissed him, it wasn't desperation. It was resolve. His hands found her jaw, not to hold, just to stay present. This time the warmth between them wasn't adrenaline. It was choice. It was theirs. They didn't run after that. They planned. 2 days later, they left the station. No sirens, no escape. Just new IDs, a scavenged transport, and a destination hidden off the maps. A green moon, low orbit, unclaimed, unpopulated, almost forgotten. When they landed, the air was thin but breathable, the gravity light but enough, and trees, real ones, pale bark and wine-dark leaves, roots like veins in the dirt. Kala stood barefoot in a shallow stream. Her new legs, ones Jarek had finished during the final cycle on Darwin, shimmered beneath the surface, responsive, silent. No pain, no spikes, no betrayal. She moved like someone who had never known chains, or had finally remembered what it felt like to walk for joy. Jarek watched her from the edge of their home, half built from salvaged ship metal, half from stone. No fortress, just shelter. A roof that didn't leak, a stove that worked. Inside, something simmered. Real food, real fire. Her hands had helped butcher the hunt. She had flinched but hadn't stepped back. I want to learn how things die, she had said, so I can be more careful with how we live. That stayed with him. Now she stepped from the water, drying her legs with a rough towel they took turns mending. She wore one of his shirts, too big, sleeves rolled. It hung like a robe. She sat beside him on a warm stone. You should let that seedling breathe, she said. He looked up from the garden plot. You're criticizing my gardening now. Gently, like how you correct my grip on the soldering wand. I never correct. You mutter. That counts. They laughed together. Later they picked fruit from the trees. She climbed higher than he could. Her legs moved with instinct, not hesitation. You're staring, she called down. Not staring, just proud. That's worse. That night they sat by a fire, a real one. No emergency lights, no power banks, just wood and time. She sang, wordless, melodic, something that came from memory without needing a meaning. When he asked what the song meant, she shrugged. It doesn't. It just feels. When the air grew cool, she pressed her body against his without asking. No fear, no testing, just knowing. Their hands moved like familiarity, not urgency, not proof, just homecoming. Her fingers traced his chest. Do you still think I was broken? He shook his head. I think the world was. Now we made something else. Silence returned. not empty. Full, she whispered into his skin. I want a child one day, not because we need to, but because this world deserves someone born from love, not survival. He said nothing, just held her tighter. The next morning they rose, not because they had to, because they wanted to, together.